Hi, afternoon, everybody. My name is James Walker. I'm a member of Monzo's US expansion team. And I'm here to talk to you today about a project that I've been working on in a few different guises over the last 18 months or so, which is US expansion. First and foremost, thank you all very much for making the journey out here in the glorious British sunshine, also known as the kind of sweltering pit of hell that is the London Underground. So again, thank you. So over the next 20 minutes or so, I'll give some more information about why we're going to the US, what we're launching, how we're launching it, and what's next for the future of Monzo in that particular market. Without further ado, the core mission of Monzo is to make money work for everyone. And different teams and different collectives, kind of whichever way you cut it in Monzo, work in different parts of this mission. So our revenue incubator team aim to really put people's money to work. They explore a range of financial service and non-financial service products, which we can then partner with and offer to our customers to help them make their money work. Our money or our finance team, they aim to make money work for Monzo. Our international expansion team, which I'm a member of, is one of the many teams that kind of takes on this everyone element of our mission. So when Jonas and Tom, and I know Tom is coming to speak later today, and a number of other founders kind of got together around the table back in 2015, their primary mission was to help 1 billion people across the world manage their money better. To date in the UK, we're now helping about 2 million people manage their money, and growing at about 150,000 customers a month, which in itself is a pretty remarkable achievement. By launching in the US, we're now trying to help another 320 million people. I guess for scale, that's about 5 times the population of the UK, which is about 64 million people. So I guess to start with, a kind of really foundational question about our US launches is why the US to begin with? So when entering into any new market or thinking about any new product, there are a number of kind of guiding principles that we use at Monzo that we consider. And I've listed a number of these on the screen. So the first and foremost is the size of the market. How many customers are there to potentially use this product? The second is the appetite for the product. Do customers want this product, and will it solve a real pain point? The third is operational complexity, which is the kind of number and scale of operational changes we need to make a product like this work. This is important because it's a really good proxy for the kind of time and investment we need to make in order to get something off the ground and then run it into perpetuity. And then finally, the revenue opportunity. This is important towards helping us build a sustainable business, obviously, and to keep delivering value to all of our treasured customers in the future. So to put this in the context of the US, well, the US ticks a really good number of boxes here. So for size, as we've already talked to, it's a vast market. It's 320 million people, of which approximately 250 million people are over 16 and of banking age. The second is appetite for the product. We believe that people in the US think about money and kind of financial services in a not totally foreign way to people in Britain, and we believe the product in its kind of current guise will add some real value to US customers. Third is operational complexity. I think the biggest thing here for the US is language. The US is primarily an English-speaking country, of course, with Spanish as a close second. We as Monzo, as an organization, in a professional capacity at least, are really only capable of speaking English. Our application is in English. Our language of business is English. To be able to offer products in multiple different languages, we need to build an entirely new set of capability. Not to say, of course, that there aren't lots and lots of staff who speak thousands, quite literally hundreds of different languages. And finally, revenue opportunity. We believe there is a real opportunity in the US to drive revenue and build a sustainable business model. So perhaps the counterpoint to why the US is why not Europe and why not right now? It seems like a really obvious choice. It's on our doorstep. I see a man smiling in the front row thinking maybe it's not an obvious choice. Certainly, since I first joined Monzo about 18 months ago, Europe's been a market which has been, we have been interested in exploring in some capacity. It's large, it's diverse, and in many places, a lot of people are familiar with consuming financial service products digitally. So it kind of seems a natural fit. I think there are 3 things here which have kind of dissuaded us from launching in the immediate term. One is operational complexity. As I've talked to, it's difficult to perhaps overestimate the importance of language. To launch in Europe, we will need to speak many, many different languages. And it's more than just about speaking, it's about being able to communicate with a customer in a way that they really relate to. In the UK, our tone of voice is really important to us. It's not about pumping our English into Google Translate and popping it out in German. It's about being able to communicate with German customers in the way they want to be communicated to. The second is from a kind of product perspective. We also believe that people do not think uniformly about their money across all of Europe. I think it'd be both vain and naive to think that. A German customer, an Italian customer, and a Polish customer, I'm absolutely certain will think about their money in nuanced in different ways, and will have different pain points with it. If we as an organization are serious about being customer-centric and solving real pain points, again, perhaps it would be naive to roll out a same uniform product across all of these different countries. As such, we would probably want to at least drive some nuanced version of the product into different markets, which again creates a lot of operational complexity into itself. And finally, and the real kicker, the elephant in the room as it were, is regulatory uncertainty. In light of Brexit, Europe is a kind of slightly unstable regulatory environment for us to potentially be operating in, particularly when the kind of future of the bank there would be in jeopardy when we lose our passporting rights. So we settled on the US as our kind of first foray out of the UK. So we've talked about why we've considered the US. I thought it would now be worth spending a couple of minutes talking through the progress that we've actually made to date. So over the last few months, myself and the broader US expansion team have invested a lot of time and effort into making ourselves ready to launch something in the US. Originally, this was a little team of 3 of us back in kind of October. We're now a team of 17 and a properly multifunctional squad. We announced this to the world with a series of press releases about 3 weeks ago, which some of you might have seen. We also opened up our waiting list for people to register their interest for an account at that point in time. So we got picked up in a bunch of mainstream media in the US and in the UK. These are a number of headlines that I've just posted here, which was super cool. The Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Financial Times, Forbes, CNN, all picked up our story, which was great. The favorite article headline that I actually saw was Mondo crossing the Pondo, which I can't remember exactly which online news outlet I saw it in, so I won't name and shame. I actually, unfortunately, only saw it in the URL bar at the top of the page. So clearly, some clever editor had taken it out last minute when they saw that the junior intern was about to publish it. So I was disappointed, nonetheless. So to add some more color to what this really looked like, and apologies for this kind of slightly grainy photo. This was taken on the day that we launched our press release. You might see from the clock right at the top that this is about 4:10 on a Thursday afternoon. So that was quite literally 10 minutes after we lifted our press embargo, and the press started going nuts with some of the stories. So we treated ourselves to a well-deserved afternoon American beer and started to wait for our waiting list clock to hopefully begin to rise. Speaking of which, talking to the second photo, we had up a big map which we projected on the wall. And on that, we were able to show the geolocation of each of our customer signups because we were asking for a kind of general zip code, which shows in the US a kind of broad region where a customer might be from. Unfortunately, of course, we didn't put the state names on this particular map, which showed our geographical deficiencies in the US very, very quickly. So that's slightly embarrassing. So beyond our initial press release, where have we actually got to with launching in the US? So about 6 weeks ago, we kicked off staff testing, and we began internal live testing of US accounts. This is Matt Heath, one of our senior engineers and one of the first employees of Monzo, who made the first live transaction, the US card, which is buying a bottle of Cava at Tesco, inevitably. Fear not, for the keen-eyed amongst you, you'll spot a white card. We will be launching with hot core cards in the US. Unfortunately, the order was quite slow, and we hadn't quite got them yet, so this is what we were left with. Secondly, was our press release, which, as I've talked to already, we launched about 3 weeks ago and opened up our website to a waiting list. Third, and this is a stage that we're currently rolling towards, is friends and family testing. So over the course of the next few weeks, we will roll out a number of accounts and cards to some of our friends and family in the US who hopefully will be sympathetic users and relatively understanding of some of the bugs that we're still working through of the product. We will also begin to see some real volume coming through our cards, and that will help us begin to fix some of the technology and operational process which break on the back end. Finally, once we're a bit more confident in our product and we believe that we can have something out there which is at least reliable, we will begin handout events in selected US locations. For those of you who were customers in the early days of Monzo, or Mondo as it was called at the time, you might remember some of our alpha and beta events, where a number of people kind of gave some talks about what we were all about and what our mission was and what we were trying to achieve. That's something that we'd like to do in the US, and I think it will be important to us building a community of users very much like everyone in this room. These will initially begin on the West Coast in LA and San Francisco, although over the kind of course of a few weeks, hopefully in August, we'll begin rolling these out throughout the rest of the US. Finally, once we're ready and we kind of get some internal go-ahead, we'll go and release to the wider public. So I think taking a step back here, it's kind of tempting to think of this milestone as finishing a project or really finishing this big piece of work that we've all been working on. But I think, more pertinently, this is just the beginning of a journey for Monzo. This is helping make money work for 320 million more people. I actually had a holiday planned, which I'm now beginning to regret. So we've talked a little bit about why we're going to the US, and I think it's now worth dwelling a bit more about what we're actually launching with, i.e. the product itself. So the initial version of the product will look similar in look and feel to the UK version, but with a kind of slightly pared back feature set. We'd like to keep as many of the core features and user experience the same, but tailored for the US market, with some dollar signs and some English, which perhaps is not the Queen's. This is really for a number of reasons. One is complexity. As I talked to you previously, the larger the feature set and the more operationally complex it becomes. This is both in building the feature as well as running and maintaining it on an ongoing basis. Secondly, is from a product perspective, we don't actually see this as a massive disadvantage to begin with, at least. As I've talked to you previously, whilst we do see a lot of similarities between a US and a UK customer, they absolutely think about money differently, people in the US. In the UK, we've built a really solid set of features over the last 4 years, which have been designed to solve real problems which are UK-based. As we get US customer feedback, I'm absolutely certain that the product will not work in various different ways, and we will need to build an entirely different set of features to accommodate the US market. So we expect over time that our US product and our UK product will really begin to diverge. So at that point, it's really about iterating on this kind of MVP very, very quickly. So I think a good example, which has kind of blown my mind slightly working on this project, of where the products might begin to diverge is in something like checks. So in the UK, check usage has been on the decline for many, many years. Use cases are dwindling both in terms of receiving and sending checks. I personally only ever receive checks from my grandmother once a year on my birthday, which I then forget to check inevitably. In the US, however, whilst check usage has been on the decline and has been kind of trending downwards, there still remain a remarkable number of use cases for them. In particular, one that's kind of cropped up in talking to customers is that a lot of landlords and big utility companies still require you to send a physical check in the post to them to pay off the bill every month, which makes my mind explode. So one of the things that we as Monzo have been thinking about is operating as a kind of feature, and whether this will make the MVP or not, we're not quite sure, would be a solution that looks something like follows. So a customer can log into their Monzo application and look to make a digital payment. They might have a kind of drop-down list of some big utility companies or landlords that they'll be able to choose from. Monzo will then take a digital payment from the customer and will process it for them. We will then go ahead and physically print and mail a check to their utility company, which hopefully takes away some of the pain of that person having to get out their checkbook, write it, and take it to the mailbox or whatever else, and perhaps also de-risk the process of something getting lost in the mail. This is obviously a feature which kind of makes sense in a strange, esoteric US market where checks are still prevalent. In the UK, I'm pretty sure that if we were to launch this feature tomorrow, we would get like a 0.1% uptake perhaps, and mostly we would confuse the hell out of most of the people in this room. So I think that's a really good example of just one way in which our product in the US could diverge quite quickly. So we've talked about what the product is. Now I think it's worth spending a minute to dwell on how it's actually working under the hood. I was thinking when I was building this presentation how best to really describe this. And I think it's probably worth going back to the very basics of what a payment is. And for those of you in this room who are well-versed in payments and banking, please do forgive me. I'll try and make this quick. So we have our friend Matt here, who's gagging for a glass of Prosecco after work. He goes to Tesco to try and buy it. So he walks over to the cold fridge, and he goes up to the kind of self-checkout terminal, and he swipes it through, and then he has to get the man over to come and check his ID and check he's over 25. And the terminal then asks him for the £7 for this bottle of Cava. So he inserts his Hot Coral Monzo card into the terminal, and he inputs his PIN. And this is, I guess, where the magic happens. So the terminal will send a bunch of messages to essentially the shop's bank, the merchant acquirer, who will send a number of other messages onto the card network. In our case, our partnered card network in the UK is MasterCard, who will send on these messages to Matt's bank, the issuing bank, where Matt actually holds his money. And a couple of things happen here. The issuing bank is actually checking that, one, Matt has enough money in his account to buy his £7 bottle of Cava, and secondly, that Matt's account is in good standing and hasn't been blocked for fraud or for anything else. An issuing bank will use a software layer to both interpret and send out these messages. This software layer is called a processor. And the issuing bank will use this processor to send a number of messages back through the system, which eventually arrive at the shop terminal and authorize Matt's transaction. He can go home happy and drunk. In the UK, back in 2016, if you'll cast your minds back for a moment, Monzo was neither a licensed UK bank, nor were we a MasterCard processor. As such, the early days of Monzo, we partnered with both a technology partner and an issuing bank partner. This was a company called Global Processing Services, who did the processing, and Wirecard, who did the kind of card issuance. So I guess to flip to Monzo today, if you look at that far right box, which has changed. Monzo is both a fully licensed retail bank and is able to take deposits. It is also its own MasterCard processor. So in that regard, we've been able to kind of disassociate ourselves with our previous partners. So to look at Monzo in the US, to date, Monzo is neither a fully licensed retail bank in the US, and neither are we a payments processor. As such, we've gone away and we've built a number of partnerships with both an issuing bank partner and a US processor. So this obviously leads to the question of why we've set up like this. The most obvious one is time and investment. To become a retail bank in the UK took us nigh on 18 months or 2 years. And to a lesser extent, building a processor also requires an enormous amount of effort. We had one of our engineers built ours in the UK, and it was a remarkable feat of human ingenuity to build it so quickly with one person. Obviously, both being a processor and a bank in your own right brings a bunch of operational and regulatory complexity, and this is both upfront and an ongoing basis also, which we as a bank, as a kind of financial services company, would need to be well equipped to deal with. That's not to say, however, that in the longer term, Monzo wouldn't like to be either a bank or a processor. I think these are certainly initiatives that we've begun to kick off and very much would like to eventually obtain. But this isn't anything in the immediate term which is likely to happen. So these partners will certainly be here for the next couple of years. So far, therefore, we've had a whistle-stop tour of why we're launching in the US, what we're launching, and how we're launching it. So to wrap up, I thought I'd talk about classically what is next. Again, I was thinking the best way to really talk about this. And it's actually very, very difficult to talk about because we're not yet in market. We don't yet have a good data-driven view of who our customers are and what their pain points are. So it's very difficult for me to stand here and tell you what our product's going to look like in 3 months, 6 months, a year, or 2 years. So I thought perhaps it'd be worth bringing it at least to a first principles perspective and the guiding light we're going to be using to make our decisions. So first and foremost is making sure that we listen and learn from our customers. This is very basic and a totally core principle of what we are and what we do as a UK organization. And transplanting this to the US and making sure that we are a properly customer-centric organization, I think will be pretty fundamental to our success there. There's actually an article that I saw in the press about 3 days ago, which I took a bit of issue with, which was discussing the kind of 5 or 6 things that Monzo could do to be successful in the US. And I've put an extract of it here. It goes, "It's feasible that Monzo could offer no better a customer experience, no better product features, and no better value proposition and still succeed in attracting with superior marketing." So I think this really misses the core of what we are and why we are. We aren't valuable to customers because we have a strong brand. We have a strong brand because we're valuable to customers. The success we've had in the UK hasn't been built on smoke and mirrors marketing, or even events like this. It's been based on building a reputation as a company that listens to its customers, is transparent, and delivers on what it says it's going to deliver. To be successful in the US, I think we need to follow the exact same approach. To do otherwise, I think we'll be setting ourselves up for failure. Secondly, is to iterate our product quickly. It's all well and good for us to listen and understand what our new customers want, but if we're not rebuilding the product and building new features which help them solve their pain points, again, we will be missing a lot of the value that we've been adding in the UK. And finally, it's about preparing for scalable growth. This means that we operationally need to make sure that if we're so lucky as to have a kind of modicum of the success that we've had in the UK, we're capable of onboarding thousands or hundreds of thousands of customers every month without a lot of our technology and operational processes breaking. Again, being reliable is a super important part of being any kind of financial services company. This means that we need to continuously review and improve all of our processes with any kind of step change in the number of customers. Right, so that's about it from me. Thank you all very much for listening. I hope I gave you a flavor